B.A. Santamaria is often referred to as one of the most controversial figures in Australian public life. In the 1940s, he created the Movement, an anti-communist organisation. He was, of course, a key figure in the Labor Party split of the 1950s. And later in life, he became well known as a political commentator on TV.
How do you do? The expulsion of Captain Benson from the ranks of the Labor Party after 38 years' membership invites answers to a number of real, not merely formal questions. In a sense, the banning of the Defend Australia Committee was not the central reason for the expulsion of Mr Benson. To the pro-communist left which runs the Labor Party, it was no more than a convenient pretext. To Captain Benson, it was the last straw.
I think we still see that lamp on Insiders.
It's a heritage item.
Every Sunday morning. Heritage item, Jared mentions. Now, next month is the 100th anniversary of Bob Santamaria's birth, and a new biography has just been written by political commentator Gerard Henderson, who joins us now. Gerard, good morning. Great to see you on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure, Michael.
Now, I want to go to the title of the book. It's called B.A. Santamaria, A Most Unusual Man. Why was he a most unusual man?
Well, I think essentially he was a kind of European intellectual, although he didn't say he was. He was a brilliant orator, great writer, a polemicist in the kind of Western European tradition in an Anglo-Saxon society like Australia or Britain or Ireland or something like that. So he was very unusual. His parents were born in Italy. He was born here at a very young age. He was born here. And he lived here, but his parents hadn't been here long when he was born. So he had Italian parents. They spoke Italian at home, or one of the dialects of Italian. And so he was a very unusual figure because he was really, although he didn't see himself as Italian, and he wasn't Italian, he was one of the first sons of migrants who made a big impact on this society, sons of non-Anglo-Saxon migrants.
He shot to national prominence in the 1940s and certainly the 1950s. As I mentioned, he was a key figure in a very divisive Labor Party split, but he also really shaped politics on both sides of the fence in the decades later, didn't he?
Well, he came to prominence, as you say, at the time of the Labor split. I think he's unfairly regarded by some as responsible for the Labor split. I mean,
why unfairly?
Well, without question, the Labor leader, Bert Evatt, was responsible for the split. He went to war with the Victorian State Executive, and he started it. Other people joined in, but without Bert Evatt, Labor would not have split. I mean, at the time of the Labor split in 1954, 1955, Bob Santamaria is around 40. He's born in 1915, so he's quite young. He's not a member of the Labor Party. So I think Bert Evatt, without question, was responsible, and many Labor figures like the late Neville Wran and others now acknowledge that. But it having happened, Santamaria was certainly responsible for some of the tactics of the people who'd been attacked by Evatt, and that led to the formation of the breakaway Democratic Labor Party, which was prominent particularly in Victoria and Queensland.
On the other side of politics, he had played a key role in shaping the careers of quite a few Conservative politicians, including, of course, the current Prime Minister, Tony Abbott. And Tony Abbott was quite close to B.A. Santamaria back in the early days, wasn't he?
Well, he was close to Santamaria and regarded him as a mentor, but Santamaria advised him not to join the Liberal Party and not to run for Liberal Party pre-selection, and thought he wouldn't succeed because Santamaria didn't really like any parties. He didn't like the Labor Party after the split. He never really liked the Liberal Party. He got on well with Robert Menzies when Robert Menzies had retired, and by the time that Tony Abbott contested politics in the early 1990s, Santamaria is trying to form his own political party and is not encouraging of Tony Abbott. So he had an intellectual influence on the Prime Minister. He didn't have a practical political influence on the Prime Minister.
As I mentioned, he also shot to prominence with that Point of View TV program. I have vague memories of watching it on Channel 9 growing up, but it's hard to overstate just how influential the program was at that time in the 60s and 70s.
Well, it was brilliant because I think it was idiosyncratic. I describe it in the book. I mean, he essentially sat on a set and spoke to a camera for 7 minutes without an audio cue and got it all right on the first take. I mean, not many people can do that. And people will remember it still, even people who were young, who ended up watching it because their parents turned off the cartoons and put on Bob Santamaria or something else, and they remember it because it was compelling television. And that footage there, which I managed to get from Channel 9 about nearly 20 years ago now, is one of the few surviving black and white footage of Bob Santamaria talking on the Channel 9 set in Richmond in Melbourne.
So it's not the Insiders lab. We got that wrong. It looks very, very familiar though.
Well, I think Insiders just got it from Channel 9. I think they had a sale down there, I think. Yeah.
We like to drive a hard bargain here at the ABC, as you know, Gerard.
Oh, yes.
Now, you were personally very close to Bob Santamaria as well, but you had something of a very public falling out with him later in life. What was the trigger for that?
Well, we didn't talk after 1975, which is a long time ago now. Look, he was a remarkable man and an unusual man, and he got on well in later life with the people who didn't like him, with the communists, with the Labor people who he'd divided, well, Clyde Cameron and Jim McClelland. But if you were broadly supportive of Bob Santamaria and you were sort of 10 or 20% in disagreement, he regarded you as a considerable opponent. And I was the only person in the organisation at that time, although I was young, I was the only person who made irreverent comments to him and mocked him occasionally, and he didn't sort of like that, and I disagreed with him. Not on massive issues, but on some issues, and in the end we just sort of faded away, and he resented my positions, but I never had a personal argument with him.
Okay, and what do you think is his legacy in 2015?
Well, without question, he was right on communism when many were wrong, without question, and that legacy prevails. And I think he was a very forceful polemicist at a time, as I said earlier, when we didn't have many of them, and he had an influence on the Labor Party, the breakaway Democratic Labor Party, and in time he had an influence on the Liberal Party. He never controlled any of them. He was always exasperated with them, but without question he influenced them. So as the Prime Minister said at the book launch last night, Bob Santamaria thought he was a failure, but objectively we're all failures to some extent, but without question he was a very influential Australian and one of the great political figures of the 20th century.
Now, before you go, can I get you to put your commentator's hat on? You do very well on Insiders, and you write the column for The Australian.
But the couch isn't here. I can't see the couch.
All right, it's a similar couch. It's the same set, so you should feel right at home. Bronwyn Bishop, is her position as Speaker untenable?
Well, her position's not untenable unless she's voted out of office on the floor of the Parliament, and I'm not sure that's going to happen.
Should she resign?
Well, I don't really feel the need. I don't give advice much these days to politicians on either side. I think the situation deteriorated this week because of the allegations that came out a few days ago in relation to Sophie Mirabella's wedding. Now, I hold a different view on this. I mean, I think if you're in business, attending the wedding of a colleague is a legitimate expense. But the fact is that other people who went paid it back, and it appears that Ms Bishop didn't pay it back. So that doesn't put her in a strong position. But look, you know, when everyone's piling in on you, there's not much point of others joining in. And I think she's been a good speaker, and I think she's been treated pretty harshly. And in any event, I mean, I don't have any problem with people going to fundraisers. We're not talking about $2,000 a plate fundraisers. We're really talking about talking to the local people in the suburbs and the regional centres. And if you turn up at a function, whether it's in Brighton or Shepparton or wherever, and someone sells some raffle tickets at the door or takes around the hat, you can call it a fundraiser. I'd call it a political meeting. Now, what I'm conscious of, everyone wants people to go to their functions. They want political leaders in the government and the opposition. They want the Speaker and others to go to their functions. They can't really pay themselves to go there. And then when they go, there are people going through ticking off all the expenses. I think we treat our politicians, both Coalition and Labor, too harshly in this regard. And I think Bill Shorten's been treated too harshly here too.
OK, Gerard Henderson, thanks for coming in.
It's a pleasure.
Congratulations on the book.
You.
And thank you very much for watching the show.
I love watching the show every morning.
We know you do. Thanks very much, Gerard.